Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no-fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
Hello, my name is Sherry Budziak, and I am the host of the Association 4.0 podcast. I'm also co-founder of .org Community and founder and CEO of .org Source, a consultancy to associations. Today, my guest is Terrence Sykes. Terrence is the Chief Growth Officer at the Emergency Nurses Association. The Emergency Nurses Association is a premier professional nursing association dedicated to defining the future of emergency nursing through advocacy, education, research, innovation, and leadership. So I am so excited to welcome Terrence. I know this is going to be a fun conversation.
Thanks for having me. I got a lot to live up to after that intro.
So Terrence, tell us about ENA and your responsibilities and kind of your professional journey to give us some background for the audience.
Sure thing. I mean, as you said, I'm the Chief Growth Officer for ENA. Really, what that means, at least what it means to me, is bringing the entire organization's growth strategy into perspective and help chart the course for us to grow. And typically when we grow, people think money first, and money is one of those things. But when we talk about growing, it's growing your membership, right? It's growing your partners, it's growing your vendors, it's growing every aspect of what we do. We want to grow and do that really purposefully and intentionally. So that's that growth part. Reporting into me is pretty fun. I have our PR and communications. I've got our marketing team, and so that's a really good combination. Business development and sales piece. So that's really fun. One of the other things I think that I really enjoy is our creative team reports in, and I think that adds a lot of value to my division overall and what we do and how we try to create. And I always tell them we're the tip of the sword of what's happening for ENA. And but yeah, it's been a fun time. The foundation reports into me as well, and then all the international strategy. So when we start talking growth, it used to be that say all non-dues revenue, but now that we have membership in my division, I can no longer say that. So that's pretty exciting.
Wow, that's great. That's a lot, I guess. Yeah, and now marketing touches everything. So
it does. Right? Yes, it does.
So ENA obviously went through a lot during the pandemic, and it kind of changed our perspective on so many issues. So I'm just curious, how has your outlook on growing relationships and revenue shifted over the last couple of years, and what might you be doing a little bit differently today?
So, I guess I would say one of those things is probably, it may sound cliche-ish, but customer focused, member focused. I think people know sort of the what we do, how we do it, but I think our focus, one of the things that's changed is the why we do it. Not that the why has changed, but it's understanding the why. People, that's where people purchase from, that's where people join from, is that why and that impact that you're making there. And so I think one of the things that have changed, and I think certainly throughout the industry, it needs to, is just changing that focus and understanding your why so that you're bringing the best value to members, partners, non-members to we are the resource for emergency nursing. We happen to have 50,000 members, which is awesome. So I think that's one way I think that things have really changed. I think the other thing that's changed is doing versus talking. That sounds probably like very simplistic, but it should be. I think we're less risk adverse And that plays a really big, important piece. So it's, if you think about a program, education, or something new, it's develop it, pilot and test it, revise it, and execute.
Yeah.
So you have to do that if you, in today's world, I think. And again, when you get to that why, you'll understand, and certainly others will too, of why you're doing it and the real meaning of it, and you'll secure more.
Yeah, I think that is one thing that we all learned, like with associations, everybody had to take some risks and it was okay, right? Like if something worked, great. If it didn't, you shifted, and being able to kind of just be, pretty agile, and so that's great that you guys are still able to do that and not kind of revert back, which I know a lot of organizations kind of reverted back into their kind of comfort
Yeah,
zones, I guess.
it's easy to do. I think for us, we saw the ability to do more for the industry, to be more. And, even early in the pandemic, when we had to shift some things, we made that shift um, pretty quickly. And we made some of those shifts that we made become a staple within our portfolio. And so I think that you have to continue to have that mindset of how you can do more, be more, grow, and be very purposeful when doing it.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me into my next question for you. I think, obviously innovation is really important in the digital marketplace today. How do you inspire innovation amongst your team, and how do you get kind of the ideas flowing?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. um, One, I just don't. I really believe that no idea is a bad one. Really, we just have to figure out how to use it. And so, what we do within my division of responsibility, and I would say, throughout the organization, does it differently, but in the same vein, we do some things from design thinking. That's one of the nice things of having a creative team as a part of my division, and really getting them involved in how to help think that way. I've gone through some compression planning. It's wonderful training if you haven't heard of it or done it. And I would encourage anyone in the growth space to look at compression planning. And the idea behind that is getting to better business decisions quicker. And you know, when you do that, part of that is, so a lot of people do brainstorming, right? And it's one of the faulty pieces of brainstorming that people do is they mix creative thinking and critical thinking. And I know that sounds pretty simple, but to keep them separate, but many people mix them and it just doesn't work. When you're trying to be creative and you bring a but in there, you just close down the creative. What I tend to do with the team, it sounds a little funny, but I'll put a little drawing up there, and I say, if on a scale of 1 to 10, 0 being I don't want you to be creative at all, and 10 is being the upscotty, I want a 10. So no idea is bad. Let's get them down, and then we'll build from there. Um, it's really a mindset. I think to think about creating innovation and the culture around it. It's just a mindset in my mind, and that I really think and challenge my team, not just the leaders. Everyone has a place really when it comes to creating an environment. I think the final thing I'd say around how do I inspire the team. It's part of our culture really, and as long as we have that, then I think we'll keep inspiring each other in how we create and what we bring forward. And it's not always a product; it could be a process. How to do something better that way. So yeah, it's innovation is a fun part, and you have to be willing to be okay with some failing at times.
You inspired me to kind of start thinking differently, because I can be creative, but then I can critique, or I like, it's just ingrained in me to critique every single thing. Like, how is this gonna, fail? Whatever. How do you fix it? Like, it's always like fixing that pieces of the puzzle, and just to get your mindset out of that for a moment.
You
It's
have
like,
to you have to take that step back, because that the critical thinking, it does need to happen, just not then. In the midst of the creation, as soon as you, as I said, as soon as you use but, one of the things that I recently learned, instead of when you're doing that creative and someone puts an idea out there, it's yes
mhm.
and that allows you to build off of what was just said and the idea that's put out there, and really challenge the team on that. Yes, and instead of, but do you think that this, I mean, we start, the minute you introduce critical into the creative, you automatically go into a different space. So challenge everyone, separate those, be very intentional and purposeful in it, and you'll see a greater depth coming out of your session, more rich ideas and thought before you actually go in to really think about being critical.
Yeah, I love that. Um, so for, I think for most organizations, the hardest part of innovation is then delivering on these, brilliant ideas, right? So what tips can you give us to ensure that we can take concepts from that creative, imaginative side to all the way through implementation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Sherry. It's I think what I would say is don't be afraid to take risk, and really accept that not every idea is going to work. You have to be okay with it. You've got a tester concept that has been developed, and based on that test, you revise it as you need to. But the key, I think, to advancing your work or the idea is being open to failing. That's not the goal, isn't to fail, but if you're willing to, there's something on the other side of that that's greater. And I think that's, it stops us a lot of times, with those ideas. I think the other piece too is when you allow others to be a part of that innovation and delivering on those ideas, you sort of build this energy and this um, opportunity for a lot of people to come along on that journey. And so many vested people are vested in what you're doing. So, that's one of the things I would say is don't be afraid to really go out there and fail. Know that some of them won't work. Listen, I have a lot of great ideas, and I probably have some that aren't so great. You could walk down the hall at ENA, one of my colleagues over in the education space sees me like, oh, here comes an idea. And so that's great. I mean, I want us all to be open to new things, and that, I think, creates the innovation.
Yeah, I had I just, as you're talking, I recalled a organization we worked with many years ago, but we were working on a product, and the staff were just paralyzed about making a decision because they were so afraid to fail. And we had to actually bring the CEO in and a couple other senior staff to actually tell them it is okay if this, fails, or you make a wrong decision and we've got to change something or whatever. But it was a real struggle because it wasn't that they were so, as an organization, risk adverse as a culture, that taking on a big initiative without senior management in the room just kind of paralyzed them. So having that culture, I think, Terrence, and that okay, nothing's, somebody told me one time at work, Sherry, no one's bleeding, no one's dying, it's okay. I'm like, right, like, it's
Yeah,
okay.
you you have to, push through it for sure. I mean, I have sitting in my office right now a board full of ideas. That we did some with our board, some with our senior staff, and some with our leaders. And so I just have a ton of them there, just waiting to pop up. And we've done some. I mean, you have ENA University that's come out. You have Engage as a company that ENA has brought forward. So there are things that continue to build from those ideas. And not everything is going to happen like right away. You have to then prioritize which ones can we get to market quicker, which ones can have a greater impact on the industry. So there's a lot of reasons that you bring something, make it a priority over others, but getting to those ideas and building from it is just so important.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a couple of things that leads me to my next question of, what strategies do you use to mitigate the risk and maximize those opportunities? You're talking about prioritizing, or do you have some other tips for us on that?
You know, risk is one of those. I think one thing I would say is you can't mitigate risk if you are working in a silo.
Mhm.
Right. So I think that's the big thing is you have to utilize your colleagues, key stakeholders to add value to that creative. I think doing that, so you have finance people involved, you have your education team involved, you have some operations, some business development. So all those pieces come together in order to help mitigate any risk because you're looking at it through other lens. And then finally, looking at it through that consumer lens, I think is a real important one. You have to understand your market and understand the customer, and you have to go back to that why again. Why are you doing what you're doing? And those things will help you mitigate your risk. But you have to go into this not afraid and putting yourself out there a bit. Um, I don't think I've ever been upset with a staff member who came to me with a great idea or any idea uh, and said that just won't work. There's too big of a risk. We got to look at it together and bring some other people to the table. And ultimately, for me, that's the fun piece. Let's create something. Let's bring some other folks in and let's churn these ideas to something that's really going to work.
That's great. So before we started recording for the podcast, we were talking a little bit about ENA's culture, and you guys obviously have a reputation for putting culture and values at the top of the agenda. So I'm curious, is how does that impact your leadership and your area of department responsibilities?
Yeah, it's really a lot. I mean, having Nancy come in as a CEO brought a lot of energy to what we were doing, brought a lot of focus, and she worked with the organization to build this culture and create this culture that I think you've talked about and heard. I mean, it really starts, everything we do starts with culture. I mean, that's just the way it is where we are. How do you show up for your colleagues? How do you show up for the vendors or partners you have? It's really a guiding light to everything that we do and how we do it. And it allows us to get to and build that why around those things. And I've been really um, so excited to see the culture continue to grow and flourish even through the pandemic, to see that the energy is still there, that people still want to come in and enjoy what we do together. So the culture is just a big thing, and it's really allowed us um, to be willing to fail, be willing to, bring all ideas forward and not just do the talking. Let's do and stop all talking. And so it's been a lot of fun. I mean, when you think in terms of trying to what are things you want for your team and that empowerment piece. We were talking earlier of some folks that you've worked with in the past that felt almost handcuffed without that senior group around, and that for us is just not something that that's okay with us. Our culture is not that, and so we work really hard at it every day to ensure the culture is feeling good for everyone, and the team has a responsibility for that culture, not just us as the senior team or leaders. It's the organization's culture which they're a part of.
Yeah, I had a conversation, a podcast with Bridget, and we have a video that Nancy was actually presented at one of our solutions days. So we'll put those in the notes. So if people want to hear more about how the culture was created at ENA and how you guys are living those values, people can listen to Bridget and or Nancy. So I'll definitely make sure that we get that included.
Thanks for that. I encourage people to take a look at it.
Yeah. So this may be a trick question. I don't know. So, but yeah.
I like trick questions.
Yeah. So what are your top 3 predictions for future trends in associations or association growth?
Let's see here. That's a fun question. I think one of the things that we've seen in the healthcare industry anyway, but I think you've seen it in banking as well, and that's sort of the merging that you've seen, some of the consolidating, really for survival or just to be able to make that long-term impact and make it bigger. I think my first one would probably say we'll see some of that happening within the association world, or some shrinking, I think, greater alliances being formed. I think we'll see. So that would probably be my first one, is seeing some merging, some alliance coming together so that impact can be greater and the reach can be farther. The other thing that I think I would say is, it's, so I'm sort of self-serving, but given my position, but I think we'll see more associations create growth positions to focus on that. We have a senior manager of growth strategy. So how are we going to grow and build and making sure it's intentional and purposeful in all the things that we do, whether it's in the partnership space, whether it's in the product space, vendor space. How are we going to do it? And I think we're going to see more of that. I think there's more of it in the for-profit world for sure. But I think as we think about the association world, that would be one that I would see. And probably finally, I'm going to say I believe that events will look a little bit different. Vendors, attendees, the world, we're all facing this financial reality that places, I think, an awful lot of stress on the overall strategy and execution of events. So I think how they're used will be a really important, how they look financially. What are you putting out to execute those, and what are you really trying to accomplish, and how do you do that, and then why? So I think that would probably be my 3 that I would say.
And so to follow up on that, I guess, how do you see the role of associations in society changing over the next, I don't know, 5 years, decade?
I would say I'm not sure if I see it changing rather than seeing it acknowledged. I sort of think associations play a critical role currently without being seen, or better yet, without being funded. Some could say that the role that the associations are taking in any given place is some responsibility of the government in areas. And so we go out and play critical roles for our communities every day. And we find ways to fund that. So I think probably a greater visibility to the greater public and hopefully to those who are leading the country of the vital role that associations play. And when you think in terms of some of the policies that are put in place and restrictions, that sort, hopefully they'll take notice and ease up some of those things that allow us to continue the great work that associations all over the world are doing.
Yeah, that's great. The other day I was something was on the television. All of a sudden I heard AVMA mentioned, and I'm like, hurried up. I told my kids, I'm like, shh, quick, I gotta hear this. They're like, Mom. I was like, but somebody just mentioned an association.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. They were doing some like youth. It was like it was really interesting because they go and they catch and they euthanize pythons, like this club thing or whatever. And but they were saying we have to do it a certain way because AVMA and blah blah blah. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Like, so anyway,
every facet of our society, associations are impacting, and I think we just have to have need our leaders around the world to really take notice of that, especially in the emergency nursing space. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
We're the gateway to someone getting and accessing healthcare, and it's vitally an important role that we play, and we understand that, and we'll keep charging forward for emergency nurses as we go through.
Well, absolutely. Well, Terrence, thanks so much for joining me today and for your great advice. And thanks to our listeners, and hope everybody enjoyed this episode. So if somebody wants to get in contact with you, how can they do that? Through LinkedIn, or what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Get on LinkedIn for sure. They can also give us a call over at ENA. It's so long since I've given a phone number, 847-460-4102. I did it.
Wow, look at that.
So yeah, I love to connect. I love to talk to others about what's happening in our industry and learn together and grow together. We're doing great work, and we don't corner the market on it. There's other associations, so I'd love to continue to build and grow partnerships.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Terrence, and I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. .org Source specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. Please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.